This is The Law Show on CL 650. Now back to the show.
Hit the road, Jack. Don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more. Hit the road, Jack.
Hey, and welcome back to the show. We're talking about personal injury, and this affects a lot of people throughout their life. At one point, they might be involved in a motor vehicle accident. And if you're injured, you need to get in touch with a personal injury lawyer. And we have two here, Kevin Hyde, partner at McQuarrieHunterLLP, and Nate Hartney, associate, formerly McQuarrie Hunter, now just recently renamed McQuarrieLLP. Great to have you guys on the show. Now, I was bringing my own sort of anecdotes because I have a bad back. I go and see my massage therapist and my chiropractor regularly for just regular maintenance. I've never really been in a serious accident or anything like that, but I have aches and pains, so I go and see those people regularly. And I always wonder if I was in a serious accident and they say, well, we're not going to pay you, Zach, because, you know, these aches and pains were caused from before. So are they forthcoming with the fact that they've had ongoing aches and pains and maybe have had to go and see somebody for them in the past? Do you think it's going to perjure their settlement or their claim? Does it ever happen?
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
So
Sure, we both had brilliant answers.
So the word.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll take you out of the room, and you can answer, and then vice versa. And I'll judge who's better.
Sure.
You guys want to do that?
Sure.
I joke. Okay, Nate, over to you.
The worst possible thing that you can do is lie about your previous issues or symptoms or injuries or whatever, because if you do, and ICBC finds out, which they will, because they hire really good lawyers and they have investigators and they get all the records, then even though you are much worse off after the accident, your credibility is shot, and you might get nothing.
A good plaintiff is a credible plaintiff.
Yeah, and a lot of times, this comes down to the lawyer, right? Is you meet with the client and you have to explain this stuff to them. You got to tell the truth, even if you had prior, maintenance issues. That is not going to affect your claim at all. If we have a client who's injured and they go into examination for discovery, which is they get questioned under oath before the trial happens, and they're always asked about pre-existing issues. If they're honest and they say, yeah, I had headaches, here or there, but now they're way worse, that just goes to show how honest they are, right?
And now it's on the record.
It enhances their credibility, the fact that they were willing to be upfront about it. So I don't know if that answers the question or not, but
okay, let's get Kevin's answer. See what he says.
We're not looking to hide your pre-existing injuries at all.
I'm not saying you're hiding them. I'm saying the person that's been involved. They think it's going to affect the outcome,
and that's not necessarily true. We're just trying to get you the compensation for how the accident-related injuries perhaps aggravated those injuries. Perhaps those injuries were pretty much resolved, after you got them from whatever the case was, slip and fall or motor vehicle accident or playing sports or working before, and they were near resolved, and then they got worse afterwards. As a result of the accident, they wouldn't have been symptomatic. That goes to your claim. That's all fine and well, and you can still be compensated for that. But for the accident, that's the test on causation. But for the accident, you wouldn't have been experiencing this pain, discomfort, whatever occurred after, the re-aggravation of the injuries.
So how do you establish a baseline? Like, for my case, like I go to my chiropractor regularly and massage therapist regularly as part of my well-being maintenance, right?
And that helps us because we know what you were at, what your baseline was before the accident, and that chiropractor or physiotherapist or your doctor, your GP, whoever's treating you for this maintenance or these pre-existing injuries, if they're more serious, can speak to that and speak to what they are after the accident, the level they are and how they become worse, or the severity is worse of them, or their new injuries, and they can distinguish between what was there before the accident, what happened after the accident. So those will be, material documents and clinical records that we'll have access to because there was a pre-existing injury that ICBC, will have access to. But it will also show how they're different afterwards, and we can do that through getting expert reports from your GP, from your physio, your chiro, or sending you to a physiatrist who can review all the records and comment on how the accident actually affected these injuries and different or re-aggravated them.
Is that one of the lines that ICBC uses? Well, this is something you've had before, so we're not going to pay out on that. Do they try that?
All the time. That's the standard defense in every response to civil claim they file is they allege pre-existing injuries. And when you're dealing with soft tissue injuries, which are entirely subjective, the most powerful stuff is talking to family members. So in your case, we would talk to your spouse. what was he like before? He was fine. He had energy. We didn't hear him complaining afterwards. He comes home. He's bagged. Doesn't want to spend time with the kids. Always grumpy. Well, that's powerful.
You might say that's the way
Well,
I am now.
So that's how you prove that case, right? Because ICBC, there is nothing to corroborate. There's nothing, objective about it. So that's what we do.
Right. Okay.
We're comparing what you could do before the accident, what you can do after the accident, whether you had some pre-existing injuries or not. To those
that's
areas
back to the whole person approach you talked about before, right?
Exactly.
How were they before? And you have to sort of get back to that or be compensated for that.
And that's why it's also important you're very comfortable with your lawyer, because we have to really take a close look of what your life was like before the accident and be able to advocate for you by showing how your life was affected or taken a completely different turn as a result of the accident, what it looks like after the accident, and then the medical experts help us to show what it's going to look like in the future.
Now, on a previous show, you had mentioned that, from beginning to actually starting to talk to ICBC about settlement often is over a year. So how well do you get to know your clients over that time?
Very well. We're constantly touching base with the clients, getting updates, seeing how their treatment's going, seeing how they're going, learning about how their life's been affected, what they were doing before the accident that they still are unable to do or struggling to do, or they're not doing at the same level as they were prior to the accident, whether that's going to the gym or playing sports, or whether that's, playing an musical instrument, the violin or whatever the case may be, or just even going out socially. Before the accident, my wife and I were going out every Thursday for a date night, and now, I just don't have the energy to do that, or I'm in pain or discomfort. I don't feel like doing it. I've dropped out of my rec hockey league or bowling league. And we really just see how this accident's affected your enjoyment of life, and how your accident's affected you professionally as well at work. And are you in constant pain at work? Are you struggling to sit down or focus on the computer or sit or stand for prolonged periods of time? And just in constant discomfort. Are you able to do this job moving forward? And what do the experts say about that? These are all things we look into.
And do you get personally connected with these people on some level?
You get to know them quite well. You definitely get to know them quite well, because the more you know about them, the more you know about their life before and after the accident, the better you can negotiate on their behalf and advocate on their behalf to show how these accidents really affected their life. Everyone has a story. I had someone the other day who's just starting their new career as a real estate agent. It was all gung-ho, had just got engaged, and then this accident just at the worst possible time. They were unable to, especially when you're a real estate agent, you're have to go to a lot of to market yourself, and it takes a lot of effort to get things going, and they just didn't have the energy to do it. They just weren't showing up at the office, and it's really delayed his career as a result of it. And an exciting time in his life. Planning for this large wedding, all of a sudden became just a difficult, much more stressful process for him, as he just didn't have the energy to do it. He was in discomfort and pain. He was fighting with his wife more because he was more irritable as a result of these chronic injuries. And you tell that story to ICBC, and I obviously need to know a lot about them, from how their relationships are affected with their family, their wife, their friends, what they were doing before, what they can't do afterwards, and you really have to learn a lot, and it's important to feel that your client feels comfortable with you so they can fully tell the story. And as I said, it's not just physical, it's emotional as well, and that's an element to your claim that shouldn't be forgotten, that you can be compensated for.
Now, Nate, do you think the longer you wait with ICBC, the better the result? Is there a sweet spot with working with ICBC, do you think? I know, Kevin, you had mentioned a year because you need to see if there's been a change in their rehabilitation or what's happened. But is there some kind of correlation there?
Yeah, I wouldn't say if they're completely resolved and the doctors support it, then whether that's within a year or not, that's a time that we can perhaps consider negotiating. We're not simply just sitting there waiting till past a year.
Yeah, right.
I simply say that maybe
as often as a year, right?
A year feels safe. That you told me you resolved maybe 6 months or 8 months after the accident. Let's wait a couple more months just to make sure there's no re-aggravation of these injuries as you return to doing all the things you did prior to the accident.
Because as Nate mentioned on a previous show, once you make that settlement, you can't open it up again. It's done.
Exactly.
It's a one and done.
It's a one and done. Once you sign that release, and all of a sudden, you thought you were better, and you re-aggravate it when you're trying to do something you did prior to the accident, and then you have more problems with it and require more treatment. Well, you're on your own now because you've signed off on the tort claim, and it's always in most cases the Part 7 benefits as well. They settle them all at the same time, so you're going to have to pay for your own treatment moving forward if you in fact aren't completely recovered from these injuries from the motor vehicle accident.
But back to the time thing again. Do you think there is, if you're willing to wait and you're showing ICBC that you're willing to wait, does that also show them that you're serious, more serious?
Well, it's not necessarily more serious
because you're always serious. But you know what I'm saying. You're willing to go to bat more for them.
We settle when we have. We're confident that we have a good prognosis from the proper people of what these injuries are going to look like moving forward, or that they're completely resolved, or alternatively that they've plateaued and this is as good as you're going to get, and we know that.
And is 2 years enough time?
When it's time to settle.
Is 2 years enough time? Or how long?
It depends on each case. Some are a year, some are 2 years, some are 5-year claims. I have claims back from 2013 that they're still having effects, and someone recently had a surgery, in 2016 after a 2013 accident, and now we had to adjourn the trial because we want to see how he recovers from that surgery and whether he's back to 100%, 80%, 50%, whether the surgery was successful or not. It takes time to see.
And that's quite a lot on the shoulders of Macquarie LLP because you're spending money all the way through this for the specialists and to get people to look at your client. So waiting 5 years is a big investment on your part.
We'll be okay. We're here to cover the disbursements and incur whatever costs are necessary to get the proper reports in place and to ensure that you're at the best position possible to negotiate a fair settlement with ICBC. We're constantly just preparing for a trial, even though most of them don't go, and that's when ICBC is at the most vulnerable position, is when we're 100% ready to go to trial and confident in your case that we got the right reports, the right prognosis, everything's in place, and then usually ICBC will settle at that time for the top dollar that they have authority to. So
the old courtroom steps, how much ends up the day before?
Well, it's like, I compared it to like buying I recently bought a car, and you got their best offer when you
should have brought me with you.
I should have, actually. I bought it right before we came on the show for the first time. But when you have both feet out the door and you haven't been chased down by that car salesman, that's when you got the best offer.
Well, my dad calls it the $500 walk.
Exactly.
If they're letting you walk over $500, yeah, you're pretty close.
So you're walking, you're almost in that courtroom, and ICBC will likely throw their best offer at you. And if that best offer still isn't good enough from what we've assessed, we're 100% ready to go to trial. We have a whole team of lawyers, and some that are constantly in trial. We usually take 2 lawyers, and you have 2 lawyers jumping to go to bat for you at trial. We enjoy it. Lawyers like Nate, if they had their way, they'd be taking every claim to trial, but that's not necessarily in the best interest of everyone. And, trial is a stressful process, but we provide you with all the information and recommendation of whether it's worth it or not in your case, and make it as comfortable as possible for you.
All right. That's the voice of Kevin Hyde. And we also have the silent partner here, Nate Hartney. We'll get him on that. Don't worry. In the next segment, next on CL 650.
There's more of the show still ahead. This is The Law Show on CL 650.